This week on Quality Digest, the dead-end job. Is it possible to find peace and even prosper under grueling circumstances? Our guest today, Kelly Graves, believes there is. Find out more in 30 seconds. Welcome back to Quality Digest Live. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest, and today we're going to learn how to do hard time. I'm not talking about a prison sentence, though it might seem like it sometimes. I'm talking about how to survive in a job that you don't like, that you even hate, the soul-sucking job that sometimes you just land in, and because of maybe circumstances, you can't afford to leave. How can you make it work? Well, there is a way, and today we welcome back to our show Kelly Graves, CEO of Internal Business Solutions and author of the Management and Employee Development Review. Kelly, welcome back to the show.
Great to see you again, Dirk. Always nice to be here.
Thank you. Okay, I think most of us have had, if not soul-sucking jobs, at least jobs that, we got up in the morning and we weren't exactly happy to go to. I mean, but you got to do it. I mean, you got to have a job, you got to pay the bills, and you can't really afford to leave. And I think very often you might have something like single parents who end up in a job, it's close to daycare or whatnot. They can't, even if they could leave to go to a different job, maybe that job's too far away and they can't take care of their kids. So they got to stay where they're at, even though it's a job that they really hate. And who wants to get up every morning and go to a job you hate and spend 8 hours there and turn around and go home, and then after a ruinous day at work, try to be a happy spouse or parent or whatnot? And that can be really difficult. How do these people cope?
Well, there's a few different ways. I'd like to tell a story. I think we learn better through stories instead of me saying,
a good storyteller.
Here's the top 10 list.
You got a million of them.
Right, yeah, I do. Let me see. I would like to tell a story relating to this about a woman. It was a single parent, in fact. And let me give you a little bit of the backstory. This woman, I worked in her organization. I'd been hired for the organization, and she was one of the managers I was working with. And she hated her job. It was soul-sucking. Because of it, she felt hopeless, helpless, bouts of depression. She was a single parent. She worked in this county organization at the time for about 12 years. She had 2 children to raise. Because it was a county agency, she had good retirement, good health benefits, which is the main thing. Yep. And when I started working with her, she just seemed like there's no way out. I'm stuck here. And again, she felt hopeless. And so the first thing that we did is I had to help her realize, and this is the key point, is she had choices. And a lot of times we think, I'm stuck and I have no choices. And when we do that, that means we are stuck in a victim mentality. And so in just helping her come to realize that she had choices, and we explored those choices. They weren't choices that she wanted, but she had them. She could work for another county agency, maybe a state agency. She could go out and work in the public sector, and so she had choices.
Oh, and keep all those benefits because she's staying within the system, so to speak.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But the key here is that she had a choice. Even if she would have worked in the public sector, she still had a choice, even if it wasn't the choice that she wanted. The key there is the mental switch there that takes place. And so helping her realize that she had this choice. So what we first started doing was going through that. The second thing we did was I sat in on meetings because I was already there working with her and other team members, is I started helping her speak up in meetings. So what we would do is we started figuring out, how does she start diagnosing problems instead of being more of a wallflower and just managing her department. It's very important to be involved and to feel like you're contributing to the organization in many ways, and she had just gotten stuck. So helping her diagnose problems. planning with her before the actual management meetings on this is what you can say, this is what you can do, rehearsing it, and then prompting her to speak up in those meetings, giving her the self-confidence that she could speak up in the meetings, even if it didn't go well. And yeah, she had the ace in the hole that I was there choreographing things,
Right.
you know, for both her and other managers. So I was teaching other managers this as well. And so she had that safety net of me choreographing things. But in doing that, she was able to improve, one, her recognition within the company, and then two, how she felt about herself. The next thing we did was she got some outside training at the local college. So she was, you know, developing her personal skills, her management skills, she was getting extra training. So if she did want to shop her services within that organization, it was fairly large. It was about 1,700 people.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a large county agency. And so she was able to, you know, maybe look at some other options. So in doing this, we improved her situation significantly.
Now this is interesting because looking behind the curtain here a little bit, who brought you in? Did the county bring you in, or did her boss bring you in? I mean, who brought you in to do this?
That was, I got passed around in that organization.
Okay.
I was brought in initially to help with the IT department, and then from the IT department I went to the HR department, which is a whole nother set of stories. Those two actually. And then I ended up working with her department, and gosh, I forgot exactly what department she was
Well,
in.
so it means though that I got a lot of questions related to management on this.
Right.
This really spins a lot of ideas off. But so somebody, a manager, maybe her direct manager, must have seen a problem here that, you know, this employee seems unhappy or something. Can you find out what's going on? I mean, what happened there?
9 times out of 10, when I get called in, the CEO, the director, the manager, whatever, the person who's making decisions and is responsible for getting things done, they have the checkbook and they go, it's really up to me. They have pain. Sometimes they know roughly what the pain is. A lot of times they don't know exactly where the pain is coming from. They just know that we're not getting things done, people aren't communicating, there's too many turf wars, I'm losing employees, they have their own fears about leading and managing effectively, so there's some pain points. And then when they hire me to come in, or we have our first conversation before they hire me, it's my job to say, okay, what you're describing to me are symptoms.
Okay.
And then underneath those symptoms are the true problems. If we fix the core problems, the symptoms will go away.
Okay.
So that's typically where I get hired, is there's just generalized pain. And then it's up to me working with the CEO or whoever that person is, to say, okay, now let's break this down and make specifics, and then is this something you want to solve, not solve, is something, you know, and then we prioritize. Here's the first problem, and then we get success there, and then, okay, well, let's approach the next problem, and that's how we kind of went on. So I didn't come into the organization even knowing her.
Okay.
It was working with her department, and then, you know, just working specifically with her, as well as the other managers who were in that department.
So in order for what you described to work with her bosses, her management team had to be willing to let her speak up. As you said, you taught her to speak up and to make suggestions and to be part of the process, is what it sounds like. But she had to be in an environment where that was actually possible to do, right? Okay, so the bosses had to have buy-in on this kind of concept, right? So what happens if management thinks, well, it's all the employee's fault, when really the issue is they don't feel, I mean, maybe this person feels like a victim, and maybe that is part of the problem. But if the solution is, hey, you know, you have choices, you can make choices, you can make yourself heard, but management doesn't allow you to make yourself heard, what happens in that case?
Typically what happens when I'm brought in and they want me to work with John Smith.
Because John's a problem.
Right, John is the problem.
John is the problem, okay.
I approach things systemically, so John is not the problem. You know, John, couldn't be one of the problems, but the system he's impacting the system, and then the system is impacting John. So they're keeping him in that role.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I were just to go in and work with just John, there might be a little bit of success, but even if John and I make success in how he interacts with people, people are still likely to respond to him the way they've responded to him over the last 2 years.
Sure, because that's John, right? That's
they
how
know
we
the
reacted.
dance.
Yeah,
they know
right,
the
right,
steps
right,
to the
right,
dance.
Yeah.
And so really when I come in and they say, okay, work with John, I say, okay, I'm going to work with John, but probably what's going to happen is there are other problems within the department or the organization. Let's look at those. And usually there's enough pain where people say, okay, well, let's at least look at it. It's probably just John, it's not me, or it's not the other people. And then as I do an assessment, then it's like, okay, here's the problems, and they go, yeah, I guess we did have a problem there. Okay. You know, basically we turn the lights on,
okay,
and it's like, yeah, we do have more problems than just John. And so 9 times out of 10, we can fix it systemically, working with the whole system. But let's just say we were just to work with John. By changing John's behavior and helping him learn how to talk with his colleagues, his bosses, his employees, he can start changing things. It's going to come slower. It's not going to be as fast as if we approach it systemically, but we can still make significant change with just that individual and how he impacts the system.
So, you mentioned a couple things. You said that the individual themselves, the woman in this case, you had to get her out of being the victim kind of role. What other situations are there? I mean, I could think, and I just thinking back to myself, and I don't know, maybe I did think of myself as a victim. I don't. That's too. It's way long ago. But I just remember having jobs as kind of like, I've got this job, I got to go. I'm just going to go there, punch the clock. I hate this job, whatever, you know. I mean, but I don't think I felt like, oh my God, you know, this is, you know, I don't think I felt like a victim, but maybe I did. But are there other things that kind of that cause this? I mean, that you're just there, and you know, I'm just going to do my time till something comes along, I can get out. I mean. Right. Is there other things that work there besides just I'm poor, pitiful me? Yeah.
Now, when you say that, basically you're talking about apathy. You know, you're apathetic towards the job.
Apathy, okay.
Okay,
right.
You're telling me I'm not involved. And so I see this now. So what you're describing to me are symptoms. They're not the core problem.
Right.
Now you're seeing it as the core problem. But if I were to come in and say, okay, I'm looking at the whole organization or your department, you're one person within that. Probably other people are feeling the same way. So I see that as a leadership issue, a management issue.
Okay.
If you're feeling that way, the way that you and your manager are interacting is partly causing that. You two are stuck in this dance, or you and your colleagues and the manager are stuck in this dance. Okay. How can we, again, go back to the system example, how can we impact the system where I give you life, get you more in the game? You don't feel like you're in the game. And you feel like, I don't matter, I'm just here to get a paycheck. So you're giving them 50%. Now in your mind, you may have started out wanting to, you know, tear up the world and really get involved. And a lot of times I see this. People will go into an organization gung-ho and the system breaks them down. The organization breaks them down. We don't want to hear what you have to say, just shut up and do your job. And so it's really a leadership issue. So 8 or 9 times out of 10, we have a management or a leadership issue, but the employees acting a certain way, those are the symptoms.
Interesting. So, I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, if you are listening to your employees and involving your employees, then, well, we've talked about on the show, no, it makes decision-making better because everybody has input, but you're saying it also works at the personal level for the employee because those employees who feel left out or like they don't have a choice or they're apathetic because I'm just punching a clock, it helps maybe energize them to do, to get more involved in their job and to be a more engaged employee.
Precisely. And that's the key. There are a lot of what I call lazy managers. They've been there longer, and so they're the manager. They know how to, it's not because they have the skills, and I describe this to people. They say, I've been here for 20 years, I have 20 years experience. And I said, no, you probably have 2 or 3 years experience that you keep re-implementing for the last 20 years. Okay? And so what they're not doing is they're not developing the people, and that's good managers need to say, how can I get the best out of my employees? And really it's up to the leader and the manager to say, John is apathetic. How can I get John engaged?
Yeah.
How do I involve him? Because I'm paying him, $25,000 a year, but I'm only getting about $15,000 or $20,000 worth of production.
Right.
And you might say, well, all he does is work a machine. How can he get more productive? But it's so much more about the attitudes of your employees on their production. Yeah, it's producing more, but if you don't have as much attrition, your training costs are going to go down.
And sick time and everything else, right? Okay.
And people being on their phones.
Right.
There's so many ways that you start adding it up. An employee costs you $50 a day in lost productivity, and it doesn't seem like a big deal. But if you have 100 employees,
at $50 a day, right?
It adds up.
Yeah.
And I mean, it adds tons to the bottom line. So, it's oftentimes it's either lazy management, and I don't really think it's lazy in a bad way. I think it's not knowing how to really lead and manage. And that's where the coaching and the training comes in, so that, how do we involve our employees? How do we really take our game to the next level so we don't have apathetic employees?
All right. Well, Kelly Graves, once again.
All right.
Good stuff, man. I appreciate that. Kelly Graves, author of the Management and Employee Development Review. We can throw his book up there on the screen so everybody can see it. The Management Employee Development Review, Competitive Advantage Through Transformative Teamwork and Evolved Mindsets. You can get that from CRC Press. You can get it from Amazon. You can Google Kelly Graves Management Employee Development Review. There's a lot of ways to find it. Check it out. Go read it. By the way, this is a little excerpt from the book here, which I think is really good. I want to read this because I think this is kind of what we're talking about here. The central objective of a great leader and manager of people is to touch your employees at their core so they see and believe in your vision as fervently as you. To achieve this higher state, one must climb inside the mind of their employees and tap into their intrinsic motivation. Which is kind of what we're talking about here, employee involvement.
Exactly. How do we tap into what involves them, what inspires them, not what inspires the organization? If we inspire them, they will inspire the organization.
Yep. All right. Well, that is it for today's show. As usual, if there is someone you would like to bring on the show or some topic you would like us to cover, send us that idea to qdl@qualitydigest.com, and I'll do my best to get them on here. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you all next week. So long.